Welcome to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today, I have the wonderful pleasure of interviewing another individual. The episode's title is Don't Give Up, Just Keep Doing. Today, I interview Kari Rosas from the Si Se Puede Foundation. She is able to tell us her experience as an immigrant student coming to Arizona State University, the adversities that she experienced, and how she was able to overcome them. She will also delve and share with us into how being an outreach advocate from SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, has helped her. Welcome, Kari Rosas. Let's get started with the interview. Welcome back to another wonderful show of Success Innovation. Thank you so much to our audience, to our loyal listeners and viewers. This is a video podcast as well as an audio podcast. You can find the YouTube video and you can also listen to the Anchor.fm audio version of this. Today I have the wonderful pleasure of having Kari Rosas, and she is the Si Se Puede Foundation VP of STEM Diversity at this moment. She is also a native Spanish speaker from Mexico City. She is an IB alumni. She also holds a BSE in Chemical Engineering, a minor in Material Science and Engineering, as well as a master's in Biomedical Engineering from Arizona State University. In addition, she is a professional salsa dancer. So thank you so much, Kari, for agreeing to be here with us, for allowing us the pleasure to interview you for Success Innovation. Welcome to the show, Kari. How are you this morning?
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm really good.
Okay, fantastic. I gave a little introduction about who you are, but can you kind of expand on that yourself a little bit, or maybe I missed something and kind of share with me and the audience some key points that you want to share with us.
So I was actually born and raised in Mexico City in a middle-class family. I had the opportunity to go to a really good high school that allowed me to come here at the age of 18 to Arizona State University. I left home at the age of 18. My parents stayed in Mexico. They're still living in Mexico. And they let me come here by myself to go to college.
So you actually went to your whole school career, essentially all the way up to high school. You did it in Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So how was the transition coming over from Mexico, a different country, over into the US? And not only that, but getting accepted as an international student over into Arizona State University, ASU, right?
Well,
how was that?
I had really good mentors in my high school that helped me navigate the admissions process to colleges. I actually wanted to initially go to a private school in Mexico City. I had won a full ride scholarship for. But when I went to meet with the dean the last semester of my senior year in high school, he told me, really? Chemical engineering? Are you sure? I don't like women coming into my program because they're just here to find a chemical engineer husband.
Really?
And and that was the dean of engineering of the school that I wanted to go to. And so that just made me rethink whether I wanted to stay in Mexico City or not. Unfortunately, there's a very machista culture over there still. And I didn't like that. I didn't like experiencing that. And I talked to a friend, his name is Galan, and he told me that, a lot of us are applying to go to schools outside of Mexico. Why don't you apply? It will give you more options. And at this point, most of the applications for schools in the U.S. had closed, and I discussed it with my parents. They explained to me our economic situation, like what they could do, what they couldn't afford, and so I went off of that, and I decided to apply to Arizona State University,
Okay. So
and I got accepted, and so yeah, that's how.
fantastic, fantastic. So now that you get accepted, you come in. This I don't know if you had come to the United States before on a trip, vacation, or whatnot. So you come in as a student, and the
Mhm.
transition period as a student. I mean, you essentially jump right in. It's all English, different culture than what you're used to. Can you kind of go back to that time, the first couple days or months, and how was that adjustment for you?
I thought coming in that I would be okay with the language
Hmm.
because I've been studying English since I was in preschool, but it's not the same thing to study it in a classroom and to practicing in a classroom and then be completely immersed in the culture and the language while also trying to adjust to college. So it was definitely very difficult for me, especially in some classes where some professors were in that welcoming of questions during an exam, because sometimes I would be struggling in exam because I didn't know the meaning of a word rather than not knowing how to solve a problem.
Right.
And so that would be that definitely cost me a few uh, GPA points.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you manage to cope with all of that turmoil situation? Was there some association you reached out to, a group of students, some mentors that you kind of made along the way? How did that work out?
So coming in, I had a really good what is it called? The word completely escaped me, but the person that helps you plan your classes, and
Counselor?
yes, I had a really good counselor at ASU that helped me choose my classes
Okay.
and choose my professors. Also, she encouraged me to live on campus, which was really good for me because that's how I got to meet the first few of my friends
Hmm.
on
Okay.
campus. We lived on the same floor. It was an engineering building. Everyone was very welcoming. The
Okay.
culture at ASU is definitely very nice.
Okay, so the transition period was a little difficult, a little rocky, bumpy, and but you managed to go through with it. So now you mentioned chemical engineering. Why did you decide? And I guess I'm going to go back a little bit, if you don't mind, to your
Mhm.
early years. I mean, you're studying English since you were a young individual in preschool, kindergarten, middle school, elementary, and high school. So you have all this time studying English. But at what point? And you said that you're from a middle class family over in Mexico. So, at what point did you start delving into the STEM? If at the college transition period you found obstacles, I'm assuming that there must have been other obstacles, but how did your parents were helping you to, develop that love for STEM, a STEM field, science, technology, engineering, mathematics? And you mentioned chemical engineering just because it's something that delves with, the sciences. So how did you jump into that? And if you can recall, how did that love develop for that field?
Mhm. Well, my mom is a nurse and my dad is a dentist.
Okay.
So I was always interested in something related to the medical field. But when I was in third grade, I got the chance to come to Chicago and meet some of my family members. At the time, they were undocumented, and I had one of my cousins that was going to the University of Illinois at Chicago, and she was studying computer science engineering
Okay. Okay. So
as an
that.
undocumented student. And there was no DACA at the time. And even after there was DACA, she wasn't able to qualify for it because when she came to the US, she was she was a little older than the year that they require for you to qualify for DACA. But that was my first exposure to engineering, and just seeing her going to college and doing a career that I thought to be really hard, and she was my hero.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and so that's when I met Lore. That's when I decided that I wanted to do something like her, like be an engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she essentially became your role model, somebody that you wanted to emulate. Whatever she was doing, you said, okay, if she can do it, I can definitely go ahead and dedicate myself to pursuing that path and go ahead and achieving it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So then you go on to, getting a chemical engineering minor, also in material science engineering, and a master's in biomedical engineering from ASU. How does this happen? Do you actually decide to bundle everything together in a package that ASU already had, or can you kind of walk us through that path?
So when I started chemical engineering, I didn't know exactly what field of it I wanted to get into,
Okay.
but soon enough, I became very interested in biomaterials and materials in general.
Okay.
And so I found myself choosing my electives as many of the material science engineering classes.
Okay.
And so I talked to my advisor, and she told me that I could actually go for a minor since I was
Okay.
already taking these extra classes that I didn't have to take. And she said, you can actually pursue a minor, and
Okay.
you don't have that much left, and you can just do it.
So
And
did that mean that you had to extend your college stay, or was that kind of just already happening and you just had to take a couple extra classes every semester, and that made it achievable in 4.5 years? Is that kind of how it worked out?
yeah, so I just took a couple extra classes every semester. I averaged and like about 21 credits per semester
Okay. Okay.
in order to do that. And I was also involved in another program called the Grand Challenges Scholar Program.
What's that? What's
But
that program called again? Sorry.
the Grand Challenges Scholars
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a program from the NAU.
Okay.
A lot of universities have it
Okay.
from the National Academy of Engineering.
Okay.
And that also required a couple extra classes to take. So I ended up averaging about 21 credits per semester.
Okay, fantastic. While you're in college at ASU, did you belong to any organization, any student societies, or anything like that that supported you or allowed you to build that network system within the student organization, school, to go ahead and succeed in classes?
I was partially involved in SHIP.
Okay.
Not fully immersed in it, but I was very interested in the outreach opportunities. So I would join SHIP anytime they would go and do outreach at local high schools.
And for our audience, SHIP stands for Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and it's a nationwide organization, student ran, student led. And yes, I think you've heard mentioned that if you've listened to other episodes. So that's what Akari's referring to at this moment. So what do you think that, when you were helping with this outreach organization events for SHIP, how did that touch your life? How did that motivate you? How did that kind of run in you? And what turnout did that have in your life?
Well, that's how I met Mr. Esparza
Okay. Right.
during those outreach opportunities. And
Okay.
Mr. Esparza is the CEO of Si Se Puede Foundation,
Right.
um, and founder and president.
Right.
And yeah, and that's how I met him. I went to one of those outreach opportunities, and I talked in front of some high school students that were ready to graduate. And I mentioned the SATs, and this particular group of students had no idea what that was.
Right.
They weren't even planning for college, and they were high school seniors.
Okay. Okay.
And that's when it hit me that there's so much need to prepare people, and from early age prepare them so that they can plan to go to college and they can strive to be more.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So what Kari is referring to, she mentioned Alberto Esparza, who's the CEO and founder of the Si Se Puede organization, an organization that is focused and working out of Arizona. So, Kari went to Arizona State from what she's telling me. And so Arizona State SHIP student chapter there had a lot of outreach events, and they at some point or another started collaborating with the Si Se Puede organization, and that's where you ran into Mr. Esparza. And how long ago was that? I mean, we're in 2020 right now. How long back was that meeting with you and him?
The first time I met him was when I was still doing my bachelor's,
Okay.
so probably around 2015.
So about 5 years back. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you started developing that relationship. He started becoming more of a mentor. Obviously, you nurtured that relationship by following up and asking him questions every time you had a chance. Off of that relationship, what has been the most valuable piece of advice that you can recall and share with me and the audience that you learned from him?
um Well, I really like something that he says a lot, and that is that the greatest gift that you can give to a child is a belief in themselves.
Okay.
And I I live by that now because it is true. Sometimes it just takes one person to believe in you,
Right.
or one person to tell you, like, why not? You
Si
could,
se puede, obviously. Si
yeah,
se puede,
yeah,
adelante. Just keep on doing it. So,
exactly.
for those of you that follow the channel and the podcast, obviously you know that I speak Spanish, and in this case, Cari speaks Spanish. So, Spanish is her first language, as I stated, but we're doing this in English, and I appreciate Cari taking the opportunity to share this so that other students that are not so well versed with the Spanish language can benefit from listening to the struggles and the obstacles that we have, or she has in this case, stumbled through and been able to overcome. So when you were started to transition from that, from being a college student and helping with ship outreach events and whatnot, how did you start immersing more with the Si Se Puede Foundation? How did you keep ties and made them stronger with the Si Se Puede? Because you're now the BP of diversity in the foundation of Si Se Puede. How did that come about?
I just kept showing up after I graduated, kept showing up to the events that I knew that Si Se Puede was hosting, or the ship was organizing with Si Se Puede. And in one of those times, I asked Mr. E if I could meet up with him and talk about like getting more seriously involved in volunteering.
Well, okay.
And yeah, and then I became his mentee. He became my mentor more officially. I started shadowing him in everything the CEO does, and in that, like, the conversation came about where he was very excited to have me on board and actually offered me a position.
Okay, so the position offering came about, and now you're officially in the BP title seat since January 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we're in April right now, so it's about 4 month period that you've been in there. For the audience, this is going to be a historical event and whatnot with the pandemic. How has that affected the Si Se Puede organization with the coronavirus and everything with the stay-at-home mandate from the federal government in the U.S.? How has that affected the activities that Si Se Puede Foundation had planned for the 2020 year? And how are you, as the BP of diversity, dealing with that?
Well, it has definitely affected us a lot. We have decided to cancel all of our events until further notice.
Hmm.
We even canceled our annual meeting.
Hmm.
Um, and we talked about this early on when we knew about the pandemic and there still wasn't any action being taken in the US.
Mm-hmm.
In early March, we started talking about it, and we said, like, we do not want to put the lives of our kids or our families at risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's always priority. We care for their safety.
Mm-hmm.
And going off of that, we decided to cancel everything that we had going on. We had, for example, we had an event we had planned an event for late March
Mm-hmm.
for our underwater robotics to compete at
Okay.
Arizona State University. Um, we were also having our high school teams meeting up so that they could compete in VIX Robotics and um, First Lego League.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that got canceled.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had invested a lot of money into that. And so we definitely lost that. But we're looking at it on the bright side in the sense that we got to mentor all of these kids and they got to learn valuable skills and
Mm-hmm.
they got to introduce themselves into engineering. And we planted a seed in these kids for them to get interest in STEM.
Right. Correct. Correct.
So it's
And
definitely
even
not a lot.
and for the audience, I follow Kari in LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a fabulous tool because you get to meet individuals that are doing extraordinary things. And Mr. Esparza and Kari are one of those individuals out there. And I noticed that you guys, or at least are extending an online presence and online um, mentoring and coaching and teaching. Obviously, for the audience that is watching this episode, we're doing a Zoom meeting, a Zoom recording. So, is this what the type of tool that you're utilizing with those students when you're promoting? How is that going? Is there a lot of response from the Si Se Puede Foundation students that are benefiting? Now that the physical activities are kind of being placed on hold and postponed until further notice, are they actually taking advantage of that time that you're offering for them to be taught over online and to go ahead and connect with you? Is that happening? Can you kind of share with us
Yes,
what's going
it
on?
is. It is happening. There, we created a Google form for them to sign up,
Mm-hmm.
and we are getting a lot of interest from our
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Okay.
We would like to reach more kids, even outside of the ones that we currently have in our programs,
Mm-hmm.
because we want this help to be out there for anyone that needs help navigating this switch from in-person schooling to online schooling.
Right. What's been the biggest lesson that you have learned as the BP of diversity with the Si Se Puede organization for the last couple months as you actually have been officially holding the seat, but more than that, just over the last couple of years that you've been involved with Si Se Puede Foundation, what's been the biggest lesson that you have learned post this transition to online and pre the transition to online for the moment?
Um, the biggest lesson, well, I think it's never good to just stay sad about the fact that we're concerned about everyone's safety, and to see opportunity in how we can still help and how we can still be in the lives of our kids.
Right. Okay.
How
That's
can we
fantastic.
be there for them? Yeah,
That's pretty
like
cool because
it's the adapting part of it
yeah,
that
the
people.
adapting part of it. Good. It's great that you mentioned it. So the adapting, the ever molding, ever reshaping, ever moving forward, and ever taking advantage of whatever is presented to you at that moment in time, and not necessarily feeling sad about a certain situation that it's going on if it's not going your way, but obviously about taking advantage and showing and standing in every time for the kids to actually see you molding everything so that they can follow suit and you essentially become a role model.
Mhm.
From your point of view, what is your mission and what is your vision as the BP, and where do you want to see Si Se Puede Foundation heading in the next year, year and a half?
Well, I would love us to be everywhere in
Okay.
several states. We have been receiving calls to expand to LA, to expand to Colorado. We have created ties with Yale University.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would love for everyone to have access to our programs and to because these are free programs that otherwise some of these kids wouldn't have.
Okay.
And I think that opens a lot of doors for them that otherwise wouldn't be there for them.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's in about 2 years. You want to expand. What's the long-term vision? Do you see yourself, at Si Se Puede Foundation for a long period of time? What's your vision on that topic?
Yeah, I would love for this to be my career for
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and I have received good feedback from Mr. Esparza,
Okay.
and we are hoping that I after 10 years or so when he decides to retire, I am ready to be the CEO.
So it is a conversation that both him and you have had about, you being the successor or the CEO in this case of the Si Se Puede Foundation. Does
Mhm.
that scare you? Is that something that, is a daunting task essentially? So how are you coping with it? Obviously right now it's you're taking in one day at a time, but has it ever crossed your mind like, oh my God, once this happens, this is probably a couple of years from now, it's going to be bigger than what it is now. How am I going to be dealing with it?
Yeah, it is definitely scary,
Okay.
but there have been a lot of things that have been scary in my life, and
Right.
that hasn't stopped me, and it's not going to stop me this time. I know that I have a lot to learn, but I have a great and amazing mentor with Mystery, and I am confident that we will be able to uh, train me.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest obstacle that you've encountered through this situation of being the BP up to this point, other than that pandemic and transitioning everything over to online presence? What's
Sorry,
been the big?
I missed the first
Oh,
part.
what's the biggest obstacle that you have encountered as being the BP involved with Si Se Puede or Foundation so far?
Um, we have had some setbacks with funding,
Okay.
but I think that's gonna improve soon.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I am definitely learning how to stand up more for the foundation.
Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah, and how to not take no for an answer and really advocate for these kids.
And the reason I'm asking this question, and I want to clarify for the audience and also for Kari, your background is more technical, more engineering, chemical. So you weren't really thinking when you were going through school, I'm going to be the CEO of an organization. You were thinking, I'm going to devote myself to being a chemical engineer, doing experiments, running in the lab, et cetera, right? Now that
Hmm.
you're a BP, now that you're in this foundation, you're essentially putting on different hats. Now, you mentioned funding. You also mentioned going to meetings, standing up for the foundation, looking for, different things to do with the kids and running different things on an online presence. What I'm getting at is, as an engineer, you're not really geared or preparing as a business individual. You don't have all the know-how education on how to structurally follow a business process, or even how to write a funding grant or anything like that. So I want the audience to understand this learning skills that are taking place with Kari are essentially being taught to her by Mr. Esparza, who has stumbled through them and is going through the motions over the years and is now transferring those skills to Kari, and she has been picking them up and she's running through with them. But it's definitely, from my understanding, opening up a lot of opening up her eyes to unknowns that she, essentially is running into, but she's being guided as to how to deal with those. And I want the audience, the young students and the young professionals, to know that this is not an easy task. And being a BP of an organization takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time. And Kari probably spends more time behind the scenes trying to get everything running, setting up and preparing. And did you ever imagine this much amount of work? I'm assuming it's a lot more work than you anticipated. Can you kind of delve into that?
Yes, it is definitely more than what I thought it was, being
Mm-hmm.
a student and volunteering for Si Se Puede.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't feel like work
Okay.
because, yeah, and I think that's what's great about this, that I don't do any of this thinking like, oh, I have to do all of this for work. It's
Okay.
more like I'm here because I want to help.
Okay. Okay.
And I I never went into engineering because I wanted money, or because I wanted an engineering title. It was more because I just was curious and I wanted to learn this and then I wanted to learn that, and it was just all based of curiosity and because I wanted to know if I could do it.
Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. I also noticed in your LinkedIn that you started what you call the Butter Lotion LLC, which is a consulting business for vegan organic skincare lines. How is that coming along? Was that something that you started before you were invited to be the BP of the Si Se Puede Foundation? Is that still going on? Can you kind of talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I started the company about a month before I started to be more heavily involved with
Mhm.
Si Se Puede.
Okay.
And I got the opportunity to be a consultant for a company in London.
Oh, wow.
And so I am in the process of doing R&D for the other end.
So you're still juggling both. You're still doing the Butter Lotion LLC along
Mhm.
with BP of Si Se Puede Foundation. So you still how's that happening? Is that juggling well? Is that how's that going on?
It's really great. I love working on the bench, and um, that love, I'm still able to exercise it
Okay.
through my company, Butter
Okay.
Lotion,
When you
and
say
on
you're
one
you
side. And I do that on my free time when I am not doing Si Se Puede.
when you said you love working on the bench, does that mean in the chemical lab bench, or does that mean, can you kind of explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, like running experiments.
Oh, I
That's it.
see. Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic. Just want to
like
make sure
in the
that
lab.
I was right.
Yes.
Being in the lab, so for our audience and for myself too, I wanted to clarify that. Okay, what is the biggest benefit you see that Si Se Puede Foundation provides for the community at large in Arizona for the students as well as the parents?
What is the benefit?
Yeah, what is the biggest benefit that you see the Si Se Puede Foundation provides for the community at large for the students as well as the parents?
I think that the biggest benefit is the accessibility
Hmm.
of our programs,
Okay.
and that we we do not see dollars as a thing when it comes to them. If we need to spend money to run a program and to run it well, we will do it for these kids.
Okay.
And they can have all the trust in the world that we're giving them the best of the best. And
Okay.
that they don't have to think of it as, oh, it's a free program, then therefore it's probably not as good.
Okay.
No, like we are working for this funding so that we can provide the best for them.
Okay. Can you share with me and the audience what type of programs are available? And you mentioned they're all essentially free. Uh, and then after you mention which programs are available through the Si Se Puede Foundation, I want you to tell me which one is your favorite one and why.
Okay. So we have first Lego League for our elementary school kids, where they get to build and program a robot to complete missions, and they go and compete. We also have Sea Perch, which is an underwater robot.
Okay.
And then when they move up from that, they get to the mechanical robot, which is Vex Robotics. And then we have for that, we have our high school teams that are Degrees of Freedom and Binary Bots that get to do a mechanical robot and compete with it. And then at the collegiate level, we have our girls that are at Arizona State University.
Right. And that's the Si Se Puede, right?
No,
No, that's not it. Okay.
no, that's not our Si Se Puede.
Okay.
Our Si Se Puede is a program for 8th grade girls.
Okay.
Where they get to learn Arduino,
Okay.
and they get to take an Arduino robot home so that they can keep learning it. It's a 3-day program where they receive training and they learn how to actually code and an Arduino. Yeah.
Okay. And you were mentioning, and I'm sorry, I was wrong in the Si Se Puede. You were mentioning your collegiate program. Can you kind of tell us about that collegiate program?
And that's also a robotics all-female team that last year took 3rd place in the world and 1st place in the U.S.
Okay. Were they doing FRC? What were they doing?
No, that one is an underwater.
Underwater robotics competition. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, I also know that you guys have a soccer league and you also have ballet folklorico. You didn't. I'm assuming that's also part of it. So, off of all those programs that are available from the Si Se Puede Foundation, which one is your favorite one and why?
I really love Si Se Puede.
Okay.
I really like how we target girls that are younger and teach them actual coding in Arduino. And we're actually looking to expand that program and to have them learn for 3 days skills for college, like study skills, note-taking skills, and a full comprehensive workshop for them. And we're gonna have them take a different set of workshops every year after their first year of learning how to code Arduino.
Okay. Why is this your favorite program, personally?
Because they remind me of young me.
Okay, I see.
They tend to be very curious and very excited about everything that they're learning, and I just love seeing that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. So you all already mentioned that Mr. Alberto Esparza, has been a mentor to you, and you mentioned that you had run into some counselors at ASU that kind of guided you through the college courses selection and whatnot, and coping with that transition period when you were coming from Mexico. So my next question is: good leaders always create good leaders. Do you have any additional mentors that you can share with us? Or if you don't, if Mr. Esparza has been the main one, can you kind of expand on other things that you've learned from him over the period of time that you've actually have dealings with him?
Well, I don't want to leave behind my really great mentors from high school.
Okay.
My chemistry teacher, Antonieta Alvarez, and Ralph Cooksey, my math teacher and the director of the IB program back there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what and I want you to kind of go back to when you were starting your Butter Lotion LLC organization. Can you tell me what the biggest lesson that you learned through that building of the LLC process was, and how that has helped you transfer into the Si Se Puede Foundation?
Well, it comes back to the not giving up, I think, because I created this company after hearing from someone that I wasn't built for industry.
Oh, wow.
And I decided that I am, and that I was gonna make my own company
Okay.
to show myself that I could.
What was the biggest obstacle that you ran into while trying, and what was the biggest obstacle, and how long did it take you to actually build this LLC, the Butter Lotion Foundation or Butter Lotion LLC, and from the period that you actually built it to get the first contract with London?
The biggest obstacle I think would be um, seeing something fail a lot of times and still having that will to keep going.
Okay. The persistence, the tenacity,
Yeah.
and the preparation that goes into it to make it a reality. So, and
Mhm.
what I'm trying to get at here, if for the audience, for whoever is listening, is that nothing is easy. If you really want to pursue it, if it doesn't exist, like for example, Kari, she said, "Okay, I'm gonna build this butter lotion LLC." She had to learn what an LLC meant, what all the paperwork that goes into it, and then once she actually got all of that squared away, how do I get business? How do I actually attract the contract? How do I actually execute it? Where do I get funding for it? Et cetera, et cetera. So she didn't give up. What I want to transmit here is for the audiences, never give up on your dreams. If you dream it, if it doesn't exist, you can make it, you can build it, you can make it happen if you're persistent, if you follow through with getting advice, and if prepare for it, prepare the best way you can by seeking out people who have done it in the past and can share those experiences with you. My next questions are not related to Si Se Puede necessarily or to the Butter Lotion LLC. They're fun questions, and I hope that you can just take a fun stab at it. What do you believe your superpower to be?
To be, um,
Or if you want to choose a superpower of any superhero that you admire, what would it be and why?
I think it would be super speed.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
why?
like because I would really like to accomplish more every day
Okay,
and
okay,
to read really fast and absorb information,
okay.
just be able to keep learning.
Okay, you
And
mentioned reading. My next question is exactly about that. Do you have any particular book, movie, or podcast that you believe has made an impact in your life that you would share with me and the audience so that we can extract some of that motivation and information for ourselves?
um, I'd really like to listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Okay, okay. Entrepreneurs on Fire. Okay,
Yes,
okay. That's a
it's
podcast that you listen to. Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
it's about entrepreneurs, how they started, um, how they failed, how they succeeded.
For those episodes, which one's been the favorite one that you can kind of remember, or the lesson that you've learned from them?
I don't recall a specific one, but I remember a specific lesson from it of knowing when to quit.
Okay, knowing when to quit. Okay,
That yeah,
fantastic.
that you
And that
gotta
is
know
great, right?
when when it's been enough. Either if it's a project that is just failing for several reasons, or if it's a job that you're not happy with, or just knowing that quitting is not always bad.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, and that's a good point, a good lesson to learn, knowing when to quit, because sometimes you're so infatuated with making something work that you spend all your resources, all your capital, all your energy, and you're focused on trying to make it work in a certain way, but maybe taking a step back and saying,
Yeah.
reevaluate yourself,
Redirecting.
right?
Yeah.
Reevaluate yourself and say, okay, maybe I need to take a different approach. Maybe I need to take a break. And you're essentially redistributing energy to a
Hmm.
better
Exactly.
situation. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and with me and the audience. What is your definition of success at this time? I know that you've came from Mexico. You were told you're not going to be, essentially you're not suited for engineering. You came to Arizona State University. You managed to get a minor and a major in engineering, mechanical, biomedical, and now you're the BP of Si Se Puede Foundation. And what is the definition of success for you at this point?
I think it's directly related to resilience,
Okay.
and to be able to have resilience needed to keep going and to never give up.
Okay, resilience and never give up is the definition of success for Kari. Thank you for sharing that with us. This next one is really cool because I get to ask you to step into a time machine. And when you step into a time machine, in this particular question, I want you to go back to that 18-year-old Kari when you're crossing the border into Arizona, and you're stepping onto the ASU campus, and tell me what you would go back and tell that 18-year-old Kari, three or two pieces of advice that you would be able to share with her if you had about 2 minutes.
I would tell her to keep more contact with her family in Chicago, to make sure that to reach out, to not just be immersed completely into academics, to remember her family more, because unfortunately my cousin that I mentioned earlier, she passed away the first year of my master's.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
that. I wish I could have visited her more. So I would definitely tell her to value family more, to not just be into academics and personal goals, to be more, to think more about her family.
Okay, thank you.
That would be the main thing that I would tell her.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, and that's what this question is about, to go back and tell the younger self what you wish you could have done differently. And in this case, I want the audience to take heed of the advice that Kari's saying, especially with the pandemic that is going on. This was something that had been unforeseen. This is one of those if questions that you could have never actually prepared for. So take advantage of the time with your family. If you're a young individual, if you're an older individual but have younger kids, make sure that you devote time to be with them. Don't say, oh, I'm working from home, and say, oh, I need to focus entirely on work. Take those breaks and, make sure that you check up on your kids, your wife, or, your mom, your dad, if you're home and you're a young adult, or if you're from college and you're stressing over something, taking 5 minutes and saying, hey, mom, what's up? What's going on? Touching base with the individuals. And that'll definitely cure your mind space, and it'll make you more susceptible to be able to come back and tackle those problems with a different mindset, with a different point of view. Thank you so much, Kari, for this wonderful interview. I really enjoyed my time. I appreciate you, making the time to interview and answer my questions. This has been Lázaro Herrera from Success Innovation and Kari from Si Se Puede. To my audience, to our audience, I hope you share this episode with somebody else that you think will benefit from it. Thank you so much. Success Innovation, Lázaro Herrera. Have a wonderful time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
This has been a wonderful interview with Kari Rosas from the Si Se Puede Foundation. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I really, really appreciate the conversation that Kari Rosas was able to have with me in this episode. I believe it has a lot of value for the audience. So please share, like, and subscribe to the podcast, and share with individuals that you believe will benefit by listening and or watching the content. Kari Rosas brings so much information. She is a strong leader, and she is leading the Si Se Puede organization into a brand new future with the mentorship of Alberto Esparza. Once again, thank you for listening. This is Lázaro Herrera from Success Innovation. I will see you next time.